I can't do this anymore, Samid. 3 years of watching you fail. 3 years of pretending your little startup will magically work. Devon has a real future. You? You have dreams and empty promises. I'm done being poor because you're too stubborn to get a real job. My wife, no, my soon-to-be ex-wife, slid the divorce papers across our tiny kitchen table. The morning light caught the cheap laminate surface, making it look even more pathetic than usual. I'm Samid Fredrickson, and I'd spent 3 years living in this modest apartment, driving a beat-up Honda, watching the woman I loved slowly lose respect for me. What Amalia didn't know was that I was testing her. My mother's dying words echoed in my mind. Money will show you who people really are, son. Find someone who loves you when you have nothing. I inherited Fredrickson Industries, $4.2 billion worth, when I was 23. For 3 years, I'd hidden it all, living as a struggling entrepreneur. I signed the papers without a word, my Patek Philippe watch, disguised as a cheap timepiece, catching the light. "You'll regret this, Amalia." She laughed. "No, I'll finally start living." My phone buzzed. Gerald, my estate lawyer. I silenced it. She had no idea what she'd just signed away. If you haven't subscribed to OutChannel, kindly do so to get more interesting stories from Willie's Tales. Let's continue. Sunday dinner at Victoria and Richard's house was always a performance. Amalia's mother had been obsessed with status ever since Richard lost his business when Amalia was 16. I'd endured 3 years of Victoria's thinly veiled disappointment, her constant comparisons to successful sons-in-law her friends bragged about, but I wasn't there anymore. I was watching from my car across the street, parked in the shadows. Gerald had suggested I see this moment firsthand, and I'd agreed. Through the living room window, I watched Amalia stand, holding some guy's hand. Devon, the real estate developer Victoria had been pushing for months. "Everyone, I have news," Amalia announced to the gathered family. "Samid and I are divorcing, and I want you to meet Devon properly. He's a successful real estate developer. We're together now." Victoria beamed like she'd won the lottery. Richard's face crumpled. Amalia's younger sister Sophie, only 19 but sharper than the rest, blurted out, "Wait, you're already with someone? You literally just filed papers 3 days ago." Devon smoothly interjected, squeezing Amalia's hand. "Sometimes you just know when something's right." Victoria nodded approvingly. Finally, a man with real prospects. Richard excused himself to the kitchen. Through another window, I watched him pull out an old photo. Our wedding day. He shook his head, and I saw his lips move. "This is wrong." He was the only one who'd ever defended me. The only one. I drove to my real home, the penthouse I'd kept secret for 3 years. The beat-up Honda felt like shedding skin as I pulled into the private garage. Rows of exotic cars gleamed under fluorescent lights. A Ferrari, a Bentley, my favorite Aston Martin. I patted the Honda's hood. "You served your purpose, old friend." The elevator to my penthouse required a fingerprint scan. As the doors opened, my butler Thomas greeted me. "Welcome home, Mr. Fredrickson. Your mother's portrait has been restored." I stared at the massive oil painting dominating the foyer. My mother, elegant in pearls, smiled down at me. "I kept my promise, Mom," I whispered. I found out who she really was. The apartment sprawled before me, marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, art worth millions. I'd abandoned all of this to live in that cramped apartment with Amalia. I'd worked odd jobs, attended networking events for my fake struggling startup, deliberately tanked investor meetings I'd staged with actors. My phone rang. Gerald. "The papers are finalized," he said. "She signed away any claim to your assets. She thinks you're splitting minimal shared property." "And Sunday?" "Everything's arranged. The Rolls-Royce Phantom arrives at 2:47 p.m., right after dessert." I smiled. "Perfect." I spent the next few days preparing. My assistant Rebecca compiled a dossier on Devon. The real estate developer wasn't quite as successful as he claimed. Leveraged to his eyeballs, facing 2 lawsuits from displaced tenants, and his black Amex card, nearly maxed out. He was selling an image, just like I had been. The difference was, my image was a costume I could remove. Wednesday evening, Sophie texted me. We'd always gotten along. She was the only one in that family who'd treated me like a person rather than a disappointment. Samid, what's happening Sunday? Mom's calling everyone. She thinks Amalia's getting engaged to that Devon creep. I typed back, Sophie, I need you to do something for me. Bring your phone. Record everything that happens after 2:30 p.m. Don't tell your sister. You'll understand why. This sounds dramatic. It is. Trust me. 3 dots appeared. Then, okay, I trust you. Meanwhile, Amalia posted on Instagram a photo with Devon at some upscale restaurant. Caption, finally found someone who matches my ambition. The comments flooded in from her friends. You deserve this. He's so handsome. Upgrade. I didn't feel anger anymore, just cold clarity. She'd made her choice. Now she'd live with it. Saturday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying our relationship, the good parts, before Victoria's poison really sank in. Amalia had been different in the beginning. Sweet, ambitious, yes, but not ruthlessly so. We'd met at a coffee shop. I was in my struggling entrepreneur phase, and she'd been charming, laughing at my jokes, seemingly unconcerned when I paid for our first date with crumpled bills. But somewhere around year 2, things shifted. Victoria's weekly dinners became interrogations. How's the startup, Samid? Translation. Why aren't you rich yet? Richard would try to change the subject, but Victoria was relentless. I'd catch Amalia scrolling through her friends' social media, lingering on photos of luxury vacations, designer bags, engagement rings that cost more than our annual rent. The final memory that haunted me. Last month, before she asked for the divorce, I'd found her crying in the bathroom. What's wrong? I'd asked. She'd looked at me with such desperation. I'm tired, Samid. Tired of struggling. Tired of being the friend who can't afford anything. Mom's right. You're never going to make it. I'd held her, promised things would get better. But I'd also known, in that moment, I'd lost her. Not to Devon, to money itself. Sunday morning arrived with crystalline clarity. I dressed in my favorite Tom Ford suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, worth more than 3 months of the rent I'd been paying. The Patek Philippe went on my wrist, no longer hidden. I looked in the mirror and saw myself again. The real me. CEO. Billionaire. My father's son. Gerald called at noon. The Phantom's ready. Security team briefed. Rebecca has all the documents. Are you certain about this, sir? I thought about Amalia's words. You have dreams and empty promises. I thought about Victoria's sneers, her obvious relief when Amalia announced the divorce. I thought about Richard's sad eyes, the only person who'd seen something in me worth defending. I'm certain it's going to cause quite a scene. That's the point, Gerald. She humiliated me quietly for 3 years, whispered doubts, subtle dismissals, comparing me to other men at every family gathering. She gets a public reckoning. By 2 p.m., I was in the Phantom's back seat. The leather smelled like power. My driver knew the route. 2 SUVs with security followed. Rebecca sat across from me, tablet ready with financial documents, just in case anyone questioned my claims. 247, sir, she confirmed. I watched the city pass by. Let's go. Victoria's neighborhood was upper middle class, nice enough to feel superior, not wealthy enough to be content. I'd memorized this route from 3 years of obligatory Sunday dinners. The Phantom glided like a shark through suburban streets. Neighbors watering lawns stopped and stared. We turned onto Victoria's Street at exactly 2:46 p.m. Through the living room windows, I saw them all gathered. Victoria holding court, Devon with his arm around Amalia, relatives clustered with coffee and dessert plates. Sophie stood apart, phone in hand, watching the window. She saw the Phantom first. Her eyes widened. The car stopped at the curb. My driver exited, military precise, and opened my door. I stepped out into brilliant sunshine. The custom license plate, Fred 1, glinted. Behind me, the SUVs parked, and 4 security personnel took positions. Rebecca emerged with her tablet, every inch the corporate executive assistant. I removed my sunglasses and looked directly at the house. Every face was pressed against the windows now. I saw Victoria's mouth form a perfect O. Richard stood, hand covering his mouth. Amalia's face drained of all color, but it was Devon's expression I savored, confusion melting into dawning horror as he recognized what money really looked like. I walked toward the door, supremely calm. Victoria opened the door like a malfunctioning robot, her hand shaking on the knob. The living room had gone utterly silent. 20 people frozen mid-conversation, dessert forks suspended in air. "Hello, Victoria," I said pleasantly. "May I come in? We have much to discuss." She stepped aside wordlessly. I entered, Rebecca behind me. The room smelled like coffee and broken assumptions. "I should introduce myself properly," I began, accepting the tablet Rebecca handed me. "Samid Fredrickson, CEO of Fredrickson Industries. Perhaps you've heard of us? We're worth $4.2 billion. I inherited the company when I was 23. Silence. Crushing, complete silence. Amalia found her voice first, barely a whisper. "That's impossible. You were broke. The startup failed. You could barely pay rent." "The startup was a test," I interrupted. "My mother told me before she died to find someone who'd love me without money. So I hid mine, lived modestly, worked odd jobs, the investor meetings that fell through. I paid those investors to reject me. The struggling entrepreneur act? Just that, an act." Victoria's face turned crimson. "You lied to us? To our daughter?" "No, Victoria. I lived honestly within my means. You all assumed poverty because I didn't flash wealth. There's a significant difference." I pulled the divorce papers from my jacket. "These documents, which Amalia signed 3 days ago, specify that we're dividing our minimal shared assets. She agreed in writing that she wanted nothing from me, which is fortunate because legally she gets nothing." Devon stood abruptly. "Now wait just a minute." 2 of my security team stepped forward. Not threatening, just present. Devon sat back down, his face flushed. Richard's voice cut through, trembling with emotion. "I told you, Victoria. I told you he was a good man. But you wouldn't listen. You pushed and pushed until you broke them apart." Victoria spun on him. "You knew?" "No," Richard said quietly. "But I felt it. The way he treated people, his education, his manners, the way he never complained, never made excuses. I knew he was better than we deserved." The room erupted. Amalia's aunt rushed forward. "Samid, sweetheart, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. You're still family." Her uncle, "We always believed in you." Cousins who'd barely spoken to me now crowded close, suddenly eager to reconnect. Sophie remained where she was, phone still recording, her face disgusted. "You're all pathetic," she announced loudly. "Every single one of you." Victoria turned her fury on Sophie. "Put that phone away this instant." "No," Sophie said calmly. "Everyone needs to see this. How you all treated him like garbage for 3 years, and now you're falling over yourselves because he has money." She looked at me. "I'm posting this, Samid, with your permission." I smiled at her. "You're the only honest person in this room, Sophie. Post it." Victoria paled. "You can't. The family reputation." "The family reputation?" I laughed, genuinely amused. "You mean the reputation where you pushed your daughter to divorce a good man because he wasn't rich enough? Where you paraded Devon around like a prize? Let's talk about Devon, actually." I nodded to Rebecca. She pulled up documents on her tablet. "Devon's real estate company is leveraged at 93%. He's facing 2 lawsuits from tenants his developments displaced. That black Amex he's been flashing, credit line maxed at $47,000. He's selling an image, just like I was. Difference is, mine was temporary." Devon's face went purple. "That's private information. You can't—" "I can afford very thorough investigators," I said simply. Amalia just stood there, tears streaming silently down her face. She hadn't said a word since my initial revelation. I turned to leave, my point made, my revenge complete. But Amalia's hand grabbed my sleeve. "Wait, please. Samid, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I love you. I've always loved you." I looked down at her hand on my $15,000 suit sleeve. Gently, I removed it. "No, Amalia, you don't love me. You love what I have. Real love doesn't evaporate when bank accounts look empty. Real love doesn't compare me to other men every single day. Real love doesn't whisper doubts and disappointments for 3 solid years. I can change. Give me another chance, please. I gave you 3 years of chances. You chose Devon the moment he flashed a black card at dinner. I looked at Victoria. You raised your daughter to hunt wallets instead of building partnerships. Congratulations on your success. Victoria had no response. For once in her life, she was speechless. I turned to Richard, extended my hand. Thank you for being kind to me, for defending me when you could. You're a good man who deserved better than how life treated you. He shook my hand, tears in his eyes. I'm sorry I didn't speak up more. You deserved better than all of us. I nodded, then looked at Devon. She's all yours. Good luck. As I reached the Phantom, a news van screeched around the corner. Sophie's livestream had already gone viral. 15,000 viewers and climbing. A reporter jumped out, camera crew scrambling behind her. Mr. Fredrickson, is it true you hid your wealth to test your wife? Can we get a statement? I smiled at Rebecca. Time to go public with our new initiative. Make sure they know where my real priorities are. She nodded, already typing on her phone. I turned to the camera. I'm announcing a $50 million fund for struggling entrepreneurs. Real ones. People who are actually trying to build something meaningful, despite the odds. Because I've learned that character matters more than capital. Money reveals who people truly are. It doesn't create character, it exposes it. The reporter ate it up. Behind me, through the living room window, I saw Amalia collapsed on the couch, her family in chaos around her. Victoria was arguing with Richard. Devon had disappeared entirely. Only Sophie stood watching me, a small smile on her face. She gave me a thumbs up. I climbed into the Phantom. As we pulled away, I didn't look back. Some chapters close completely. This was one of them.